From the broadcast center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, I'm Amelia Francis Fincham with your news updates to noon. A man was shot and killed after an exchange of bullets with officers near Commercial Drive last night. Reporter Maham Hashmi has more.
A series of gunshots were fired last night around 8 p.m. on Commercial Drive near East 4th Avenue. The shooting occurred in a quiet neighborhood inside an apartment building where a man was killed after exchanging bullets with cops. Nicholas Schneier lived in the apartment suite next to the man killed and shared what he witnessed last night.
Many gunshots, multiple gunshots, returned fire. It's my neighbor.
Constable Tanya Vizentine from the VPD did a news release this morning where she was unable to provide information on the reason for the shooting as it is still being investigated. Maham Hashmi, 1680 The Crow.
And we are now joined by Maham. Maham, was this gang related?
No, the VPD is unable to provide an answer to that question. They are still investigating at the scene of the crime.
And what's the current status on the shooting?
It is currently being investigated by IIO.
Okay. Thank you. Vancouver City Council has voted against a proposal that would install more CCTV cameras in public spaces to address the concerns around crime. Councillor Melissa DeGenova, who introduced the motion, was the only one who voted in favor of it. Her proposal came in because public safety was proving to be an issue after October's municipal vote. Vancouver police say the city is seeing about 4 random assaults per day. A second special council meeting is addressed tonight. To address violent crime will be held tonight at 6 p.m. BC Forest Minister Katrine Conroy announced $19 million for funding today. This will boost the role of sustainable forests and fighting climate change. Conroy says the funds will develop an innovative, low-carbon forest bioeconomy led by Indigenous peoples. The Canadian Elite Basketball League will be back in action next month. However, new fans may not know the unique scoring system the league follows. Evan Tate has the story.
The CEBL is adding teams in Montreal, Scarborough, and St. John's ahead of the league's 4th season, giving fans a chance to experience the ELAM ending firsthand. In the CEBL's ELAM ending, the game clock is stopped with 4 minutes remaining in the game, and the first team to reach a certain amount of points is declared the winner. ELAM endings gained popularity after being introduced during the 2020 NBA All-Star Game, which inspired the CEBL to become the first professional sports league to utilize them. This will be the 3rd season that the CBL uses this system after positive perception from fans over the first 2. Evan Tate, 1680, The Crow.
Police in Abbotsford are investigating a hit-and-run that put a 38-year-old man in hospital with life-threatening injuries. Officers responded to the crash between the man and a vehicle before midnight on Tuesday. The driver had fled the scene, but police say they're working with the RCMP to try and identify the suspect's vehicle. Anyone who is in the area of Clearbrook Road and Hillcrest Avenue around the time of the incident are asked to contact police. The Surrey Central area is losing one of its oldest businesses due to concerns around personal safety. The hockey shop, By Source for Sports, plans on relocating this fall. Reporter Ryan Bailey has more.
The hockey shop in Surrey has been a long-standing member of the Metro Vancouver hockey community. While they declined an interview with the Crow, management did confirm their intent to leave and that safety is a driving factor. Christine Sarte works at Gongcha, a bubble tea store next to the hockey shop. She spoke about her expectations from the city.
I'm not comfortable working here. It's so scary. I believe that police and the government, the mayor of Surrey, should make an action for this.
According to Surrey City Councillor Linda Annis, the city's new Safe Sleep initiative is targeting the downtown Surrey community. The program aims to build more facilities and housing for people living on the street. Ryan Bailey, 1680 The Crow.
The City of Vancouver says the ruins from the Winter Hotel that was destroyed by a fire earlier this month have now been fully demolished. Work is now underway to clean up the area. The city says the materials have to remain at the site in Gastown for the next 2 weeks, but it will work to open as much of the sidewalk and streets as possible to support the surrounding residents and businesses. Manitoba may soon have a special day set aside to recognize the toll taken by drug overdoses. Bernadette Smith, the opposition New Democrat mental health critic, has put forward a Members' Day to establish an annual memorial for drug-related deaths.
It's about the mental health of families and helping them to, grieve on that day, to come together, to support one another.
Ottawa's interim police chief is warning the biker convoy that the city will not tolerate any sort of occupation in the capital. The warning came this morning as hundreds of bikers are preparing to descend on the capital city this weekend.
We've been really clear. We're not going to tolerate any sort of unlawful activity that indicates any sort of longer-term occupation of any area of our city. We will be very responsive and very proactive in identifying and dismantling any sort of circumstances like that.
American vaccine maker Moderna intends to announce tomorrow that they plan to build a Canadian production facility in the Montreal area. Meanwhile, the company has asked U.S. regulators to allow the nation's youngest children approval for the COVID-19 vaccine. The company hopes the FDA will approve the vaccine in time for kids under 5 to start receiving it by summer. Conservative leadership candidate Pierre Poilievre is vowing to audit the Bank of Canada and bar the use of its own digital currency. The longtime MP announced his plans while standing in front of the central bank's museum doors in the nation's capital.
It is the job of elected officials to hold powerful people to account. When powerful people do damage to everyday citizens with their policies, it is our job as elected officials to call them out for it and to fix the problem.
Israel came to a halt today to honor the Jews killed in the Holocaust. Jordana Miller has the story.
A 2-minute siren wailing across Israel, people in traffic screeching to a halt, a collective moment to honor the memory of 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. This year's state ceremony at Yad Vashem focusing on the transports. That's the vast and meticulously planned Nazi train system that deported Jews all across Europe to their death. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett rejecting the comparison of, quote, wars today to the Holocaust. He called it an unprecedented event in human history. Jordana Miller, ABC News, Jerusalem.
And for the weather today, a mix of sun and clouds with a chance of rain this afternoon. A high of 12 degrees is expected, with winds getting up to 10 kilometers per hour. And that's all for this hour. I'm Amelia Francis Fincham with 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon and welcome back to 1680 The Crow. I'm Ryan Bailey with your 12:10 sports headlines. The Vancouver Canucks will play their final home game of the season tonight against the Los Angeles Kings. In celebration of their final game, the team will announce its team award winners and also have festivities around the arena for Fan Appreciation Night. Goaltender Thatcher Demko was scratched ahead of Tuesday's game due to an undisclosed injury. His status is questionable at this point, which means Spencer Martin could get the start again. Martin was impressive in the win over Seattle on Tuesday, stopping 30 of 32 shots. Busy day in the NHL today with 18 teams in action, including 4 Canadian teams. With the playoff picture all but set, the only remaining seeding that hasn't been determined is the Western Conference wildcard spots. The Dallas Stars and Nashville Predators are both into the playoffs, but their matchups are not yet certain. Dallas will not play today, but Nashville will be taking on the division-clinching Colorado Avalanche. Along with the Canucks, the Senators, Flames, and Oilers will also be in action tonight. The Vancouver Whitecaps have signed international midfielder Andres Cubas to a 4-year Major League Soccer deal. Cubas was acquired through transfer from French club Nîmes Olympique. The 4-year deal also includes an option for the last 6 months of 2026. The Paraguayan will join the club as soon as visas and transfer documents are finalized. The 25-year-old has played in 167 matches at the club level with teams in Argentina, France, and Italy, totaling 3 goals and 4 assists. Cubas leads League 2 in France with 2.6 tackles per match and ranks second in interceptions. The Toronto Raptors are back north of the border for Game 6 tonight. Down 3-0 after Game 3, the Raptors have come back and hope to force a Game 7 on Saturday. Point guard Fred VanVleet left Game 4 with a hip injury and was sidelined for Game 5. Though he's hopeful to return soon, he looks questionable for tonight. In his absence, big man Chris Boucher says he's been impressed with how the young Pascal Siakam has stepped up.
His maturity and growth this year is not only on the court, but just as a person. I think just the way that he approached the players, different teammates on his team, I think he's figuring out so many ways of how to approach them and when to approach them, and it's really beautiful to see.
2 other games going on in the NBA playoffs today. As the first round comes to a close, 2 teams have the chance to clinch a spot in the next round. Last year's Western Conference champions, the Phoenix Suns, are in Louisiana to take on Brandon Ingram and the Pelicans. Phoenix leads 3-2 going into tonight. Suns shooting guard Devin Booker is questionable to play due to a hamstring injury. And the Dallas Mavericks will try and send the Utah Jazz packing in Salt Lake City. Jazz guard Donovan Mitchell has been banged up in these playoffs, but insists he is good to go for tonight. The NFL Draft begins today and begins in style. For the first time ever, the event will be held in Las Vegas on the famous Las Vegas Strip. 5 Canadians are looking to get the call, including Brampton, Ontario's John Mechie, who is projected to go in the 2nd or 3rd round. On to junior hockey, where Canada's U18 men's ice hockey team lost its quarterfinal match against Finland in overtime. In the high-scoring affair, North Vancouver's Connor Bedard scored 2 goals and put the Canadians on top 5-3 in the 3rd period. But with 4 minutes left, the Finns came within 1 and then tied the game with 1:43 remaining in the 3rd. In the overtime period, Joakim Kemmel scored his hat-trick goal to win the game. Bedard said afterwards that losing this game is a hard one. Returning to basketball now, the Canadian Elite Basketball League will be back in action in less than a month and features 3 new expansion teams from around the country. However, fans might not be familiar with the unique scoring system the league follows. With more, here's Evan Tate.
The CEBL is adding teams in Montreal, Scarborough, and St. John's ahead of the league's 4th season, giving fans a chance to experience the ELAM ending firsthand. In the CEBL's ELAM ending, the game clock is stopped with 4 minutes remaining in the game, and the first team to reach a certain amount of points is declared the winner. ELAM endings gained popularity after being introduced during the 2020 NBA All-Star Game, which inspired the CEBL to become the first professional sports league to utilize them. This will be the 3rd season that the CBL uses this system after positive perception from fans over the first 2. Evan Tate, 1680, The Crow.
Canada's dynamic duo of Jocelyn Peterman and Brett Gallant are gearing up for the playoffs at the World Mixed Doubles Curling Championship. The tandem won convincingly against the Australians 10-2. With just one game left in round-robin play, they'll finish with a match against the Americans today. That will do it for me. From the BCIT Broadcast Center in Burnaby, I'm Ryan Bailey for 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Hey there, welcome to For the Record. I'm your host, Sadie Chung. You're listening to 1680 The Crow. Charmaine Brett Mills joins us today. Charmaine brings more than 20 years of experience in international humanitarian relief. She's the executive director of Veterinarians Without Borders Canada, which has just recently deployed Canadian vets to the Polish-Ukraine border to support the provision of animal health care to pets fleeing war action with their owners. Thanks for joining us today, Charmaine.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start off by telling me about what sparked the initiative in deploying vets to the Polish-Ukraine border?
Veterinarians Without Borders Canada is a member of VSF International, which is a network of 13 organizations that all have very similar mandate to serve animal welfare and animal health organizations internationally. Vets Without Borders Canada is a very unique organization because we not only work internationally, but we also have the opportunity to work in our own backyard in Northern Canada, and we've been doing so since 2019. We offer remote animal health clinics to communities who have requested it in the north. Internationally, we are working in South Sudan, Kenya, Senegal, Ghana, and in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And our programming there has really been backboned on a volunteer sending type model, where we've been offering technical animal health experts to our local partners and really helping them build their capacity. Our mission embodies One Health and localization. So really working through local partners to ensure we have a sustainable approach. In South Sudan, we've had a little bit more of an emergency type lens to our work as it's an ongoing emergency setting. Which has really helped us to be able to launch our programs in Ukraine for this current response efforts.
So what exactly do your response efforts consist of?
So as soon as the war began, we started to look at how we can support the situation on the ground, and really piggybacking on our expertise in localization, we began to search and find animal health organizations within the Ukraine and identify ones that were needing support and ones that were really becoming the backbone of the communities. I've been very impressed by the organization of the Ukrainian population and how they've quickly come to the table to support the animal health needs. We've been able to partner with some really key groups in country. One organization that I spoke with yesterday has had over 700 requests to support animal health centers, shelters, communities with their growing needs as the war continues. So our response is really looking at supporting these organizations so they can deliver food and medicine to the organizations, the shelters in need, as well as rebuilding. There's a little bit of rebuilding that they can do right now that is imperative for the animal health and safety. A lot of the shelters have been hit. So really having that core infrastructure developed so that they can continue operations. One thing that's really, just really hits home as something is that as the communities are fleeing, the one thing that is staying is the shelters because they can't flee with the animals. I was speaking to a lady who runs a shelter just outside of Kyiv, and she has now 700 animals, and she's taking care of the animals on the streets, and there's nobody around but her and her father, and they are doing everything they can to keep the animals alive and themselves, and it's heartbreaking.
Why do you think animals have become such a central focus for many in this war?
Yeah. Having worked in international humanitarian response for my whole career, I find it fascinating. I've responded in Congo, in South Sudan, in Haiti. This situation is completely different. If you were in Congo supporting in a conflict situation and you ask people what they would need, they'd say food, water, shelter, protection. If you ask people in the Ukraine what they need, they say food, water, shelter, protection, and my dog. I need safety for my dog. That human-animal bond is just something that is rising to the top in this conflict, and it is really bringing animals front and center.
Totally. As a dog owner myself, I could not imagine leaving my pet behind. What are you seeing from your partners in Ukraine?
So the local partners in Ukraine are really, they're exceptional at organizing right now. There's a group of 13 organizations that have come together, and they've created this really amazing platform and database where they're able to track real-time needs of the shelters within the whole country and then organize the logistics to get them supplies. Our one partner yesterday almost delivered supplies to 6,000 animals in Ukraine. So just really, it's an amazing logistical setup that they have. And they're getting all of the supplies through the border in Poland and then bringing it up in a warehouse in Lviv and then distributing throughout the country.
So that's in Ukraine. Now, what are you seeing on the border in Poland?
So we have deployed 2 Canadian veterinarians to assess the situation in Poland and try to identify any gaps. We've been to numerous refugee camps. We even set up a little animal health center in one. And it is astonishing how well the Polish government is doing. They have been so organized. They have really been able to do an exceptional job as animals come in. They're vaccinating, microchipping, and sending everybody on their way. So it's really a transitional setting. We're still assessing in the Medyka border area right now, and we haven't come clear what the needs are there. But what we've seen throughout a lot of the parts of Poland is that the government is doing an amazing job.
So you mentioned you've deployed 2 vets. I understand they are Rob and Elaine Clemenson. Can you tell me a bit about them?
Yeah, so Rob and Elaine they're amazing. They have done clinics with us in Northern Canada for a long time. They're a great team. They can work in a really remote rural setting and kind of hit the ground running. And they phoned me up and said they wanted to go and do this right after we said that we wanted to send somebody. So they really just dropped everything and were ready to hit the ground running. They haven't been practicing veterinary medicine in Poland. That wasn't the mission that they were set out to do. They're really just going and assessing and networking and finding out where are the gaps. And they're doing an exceptional job at doing that.
Were you surprised at all at how quickly they stood up to help? How did that make you feel?
So I was surprised how quickly they stood up, but what was more surprising is that I've had over 200 other veterinarians say that they will drop everything right now and leave. I've had veterinarians, the majority from Canada, but also from the States and from Europe. It's so heartwarming to see how the animal health sector has really come together in this time.
So the vets that are willing and eager to help as well, do you plan on deploying them too?
So right now we're assessing the need, and within the Polish sphere, we are not seeing a need for additional international veterinarians to go in. We're still looking to see if there's needs for us to be helping out in the Medyka border. This is a very quickly evolving situation. So it's hard to say what our international volunteer needs will be throughout the whole response. But as of right now, we're holding off on putting anybody else on the ground.
And going back to Rob and Elaine, have you heard back from them since? How's it going?
Yeah, I speak to them every half an hour, pretty much, I think. Yeah, they're doing great. They've really become a part of the community. They have a driver that they're using. They have a kind of a house that they're staying at, and the owner's really been helping them find their way. They've been going to the train stations, to the refugee camps, talking to the population. They've been doing a great job.
Good to hear. What kind of safety protocols do you have in place? Was there any fear of what things were going to be like over there?
Yeah, for sure. So in Helm, where they are right now, at the camp where they're staying just beside, there's 130 Polish military. So they have very up-to-date security information. We're also working with an organization called Safer Access, and they're based in Lviv. They're Canadian, and they are security consultants. So they're helping us to understand the situation on the border and the overall context of the war, as well as hopefully being able to support our local partners within the country.
So you recently launched an emergency fundraising campaign. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so our fundraising campaign is really about supporting the partners on the ground and our response efforts as things unfold with the war. And we've been utilizing those great dollars to support the partners directly in Ukraine to help the animal situation. So really providing food and medicine, as well as continue their operations as much as possible. And the funds that we have received and been able to deploy has been so well received by the partners. One partner, we sent just a small amount of money, $4,000. They went out within an hour and bought animal food and medicine and then emailed me the receipts for all of their pets. It's just amazing.
There's a lot of dog owners and pet owners here in Canada and BC as well. Do you find that because of that human-animal bond connection you mentioned, you are seeing more people who can relate and are more willing to support?
Absolutely. Putting yourself in the situation of somebody who's trying to flee with their dog. I know myself, I couldn't imagine my cat's right beside me, having to put her in my coat and try to flee with my children. And it just makes you want to do anything you can to help those people because they're in such an awful situation.
So where do you go from here? You mentioned things are constantly changing. What are the next steps?
Yeah, so I think that nobody can predict how the war is going to go from here. What parts of the country will be able to continue aid in, how many people will be fleeing, and how that will change at the border. So I think being able to understand how the network of logistics for supporting the shelters in country rolls out, and having that move in a sustainable way, as well as having a presence so that we can identify as needs change at the border areas and support them. There's been a lot of people who have fled, but there are a lot of people left in Ukraine, and making sure that we support them as they move through this awful situation is key.
And what has been the state of these pets? I can imagine they're quite frightened.
Yeah, so what they're seeing at the Polish border, it changes through the different entry posts, right? In Helm, the animals that have come through that they've seen they've been frightened, and like they haven't been to the bathroom in a long time. They're not seeing a lot of wounded animals. It's more animals that have just really been impacted by the trauma. Where they are now at the border crossing, I've heard that there's up to 30% animals coming through with the people. So it'll be interesting to see what they say as far as the needs are there and the animals that are impacted, if they're injured or what the situation is.
Okay, so there are no implications about bringing pets across the border?
That's correct. Right now, pets are allowed to come across the border and transition from Poland as long as they're microchipped and vaccinated, and the Polish government is doing both.
Are there any other ways your organization might help other than with domestic pets?
I think one thing that I'm really trying to understand and identify moving forward is not just the domestic animals, but the farm animals. And I think that's something that hasn't really been touched upon in the response efforts. And I've been trying to reach out to our partners to get a better understanding of what has happened to all the farm animals and how are they doing now? Have they just been released? Are the farmers still there? It's much more difficult to connect with individuals in Ukraine versus the organizations. And it's those individual farmers that we really need to understand the status of and how they are surviving in the land.
And if that is the case, that these Ukrainian farmers do need help for their animals, where would you go from there?
Yeah, so that's a very similar type response program to what we have had in other countries. You're really looking at a food security livestock type programming, which we can definitely do and have done a lot in the past. The thing that is the caveat is the conflict and where it's moving. So you want to make sure that you are being as safe as possible, right? And understanding where the security issues are.
We don't have much time left, Charmaine. Is there anything else you'd like to add on behalf of Veterinarians Without Borders?
So I think from VWB's side, we just really want to say thank you to all of our supporters and to all of the people who have come to the table. There's been people saying they want to volunteer. There's been organizations sending medical supplies, medicine. There's been people who are saying they'll buy food, they'll send their points. It's just been amazing to see how many people want to help out this dire situation. And it really, in a time when things seem so awful, brings that beacon of light to show that humanity is really stepping up.
It certainly does. Well, thank you to my guest, Charmaine Brett Mills from Veterinarians Without Borders. That's all the time we have today on For the Record. I'm Sadie Chung. You're listening to 1680 The Crow. Take care and best of luck.
Corey Douglas, Squamish Nation member with Haida and Tsimshian ancestry. We wear a number of different names associated with this position. I'm active in the architectural and building industry, providing cultural knowledge to the professionals in the industry for culturally sensitive integrated design, and have periodically dabbled in art commissions, whether it be graphic pieces, jewelry, painting, whatever.
What does it mean for you being part of these kind of roles on these kind of projects, especially bringing the importance to the Squamish Nation and to all these indigenous cultures?
For me, it's a sense of pride. I spent most of my young adult life, I'm 47 years old now, but the first 30 years of my life I didn't know anything about my culture, and had been employed in an industry that has helped shape our traditional territory. Realizing that there is greater potential when it comes to culturally integrated design into the building type, programming, landscaping, whatever is being developed as part of the project, and realizing and daylighting some of these potentials.
You said that for a big part of your life you weren't too familiar with your culture, you didn't embrace it. I just want to know, why is that?
What had pulled me or strayed me away from understanding or realizing the cultural importance of my... It all stems from the residential school system. So my father's a residential school survivor, as is his mother. His mother was the first of our immediate family that walked through the residential school doors. She was the last of my immediate family to speak the Squamish language fluently. She was the last to live in a longhouse. She was the last to travel traditionally by canoe along these shores here. That's one generation separating me from that way of living. That disconnect happened the moment my grandmother walked through those doors.
I would love to hear if these kind of projects, when you were young, will have helped you to embrace your culture, to be inspired about your culture and all.
What you're seeing here is a higher level of cultural recognition in design. These are leading subjects and projects for youth members from our community to realize, how influential we can be in major projects. I always joke around about the Trump Tower that's downtown. I know the name has been stripped off of it. Well, fucking give it back to Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. That could be an iconic building that could clearly represent part of the commitment that the industry has, the city has, to reconciling with host nations. That could be a starting beacon for how our culture is being represented downtown. But you're right. I mean, there are going to be greater levels of acknowledgement. Not to take away that I realize we live in this multicultural society. We still need to celebrate it. But I think the host nations, the Coast Salish people, need to be appropriately represented as priority and first.
I'm just a little bit curious. Would you mind giving me an example about how your work or anybody else who could be in a position like you would affect the architecture of, say, a building, art installation, landscape, something?
Yeah, this is kind of what I'm talking about now. I have 3 screens up. So one is kind of listing all of my project list. Far right screen is a graphic installation, and then my laptop screen is showing a building that I had designed for, and we finally came up with what you're seeing here and presented it back to the university, and they absolutely fucking loved it. Now, realizing what that potential is, this is the level of commitment that I think would capture the attention of anyone who's wanting to commit to reconciling with the host nations. And that host nations doesn't necessarily mean here in Vancouver. It could be a project in Heiltsuk territory, Haisla territory, Haida Gwaii in the Haida Nation territory. If if industry leaders can realize that this could be of influence in committing, again, that level of engagement and participation in reconciling with a First Nations community, this is what we can do.
Well, now I think, to grab around, I think I would love to hear just about any project. It doesn't have to be architectural, it could be jewelry, it could be a tattoo, it could be, I don't know, that you want to talk about.
I did some work for a small organization that was previously known as the Squamish Nation Snowboard Team. It's a small organization that has grown exponentially over the years. I was commissioned to do a rebranding for them. And you'll see it on the wall over here. The center medallion is a silhouette of a young person skateboarding, and that was a feel-good moment. Giving back to the communities, the First Nations communities, and also establishing a long-standing relationship with them, and looking at having them partner up with industry leaders from the building industry to help sponsor maybe. You know, we just did a live auction where artists like myself, I pulled together a number of other artists from the community to donate a skateboard design that they were going to do an auction, silent auction. And yeah, it was a feel-good moment.
Is there anything we should have asked or anything that you want to add?
So my position as a cultural planner is going to have to be, these shoes are going to have to be filled going forward. I'm not going to be here doing this for the next 30 years, but we're building a program that's going to support the growth of this industry. Having youth members from Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh to participate in this program and to become educated by leaders like myself, so that there's a position for them in this industry to be employed.
Ruby Rocks is a plus-size model who has been working professionally in the modeling industry for over 7 years. Her original Instagram account of over 500,000 followers was removed from the social media platform for allegedly violating guidelines. Ruby has been fighting for months to get her account back with no success, yet accounts for thinner models are allowed to continue posting the same type of content she was. What message is Instagram sending to its users about body imagery, and what society biases are they acting on by removing accounts of plus-size models?
Hi! How are you? Go ahead.
He's very excited.
Good.
Cash, stay down.
Oh,
don't jump.
hi, buddy.
It's okay. Don't jump.
Hi, buddy.
Good boy. Oh my gosh. I love your
would you like to take
So Ruby Rocks is my alter ego. My real name is Jen. But when I first started modeling, which was like 15, almost 16 years ago, it was something that like I really wanted to do, and I wasn't really going to let anything or anyone stop me from doing it, but I thought it would just be safer to have an alias, in a sense, you know?
Ruby does most of her work as a freelance artist and says 90% of her bookings come through her social media accounts, which is also the place she has built a large community.
So it played a huge part in what I've done. It's how people find me, it's how people get to know me, it's a way that I can show off my portfolio and also like connect with a community of people. They can get to know me, I can get to know them. It had a huge role in everything, really. But I do really like to use it to not only talk about like fashion and pretty things, but also things that are really important to me. So things like body positivity and self-love and compassion, mental health awareness, things like that. I started with my Facebook page, and that grew to like over 2 million followers. And my Instagram, I started it pretty quickly after Facebook, pretty much as soon as Instagram came out, I started an account. That grew to 500,000 followers until it was deleted.
Ruby has sent appeals to Instagram every day since her account was deleted 3 months ago, but has never received a response. While she does have a new active account, Ruby has noticed an increasing number of other accounts being deleted for the same so-called guideline violations.
I am a rule follower by nature. Like, I don't have any issues with like rules and regulations. I understand why they need to be in place, especially with like public formats like Instagram and social media. Like, I get it, but it needs to be equal throughout all users, not cherry picking who it applies to and who it doesn't. Kendall Jenner, one of the genders, posted a full nude photo on their Instagram last week. Chelsea Handler was in Whistler. She was skiing topless for her birthday, smoking a joint and like with a glass of whiskey, no problem. So it's like, well, then how come they get to do that, but my photos where I'm covered, where I'm wearing lingerie or like a bikini or something like that, those photos are taken down for like sexual exploitation? That's the part that really gets me. Anybody who's not an A-list celebrity with millions and millions of followers or has the perfect body type, quote unquote perfect, there's no such thing as a perfect body type, you're not that exact type, you're gone. Why can they do it but I can't? That's the issue that I have, is the double standard of it all. And it's also teaching children sexuality or anything like that is bad and wrong. We need to be teaching the opposite of that, that like sexuality is normal and it's human and it's just part of life.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Hi, I'm Riley Lyons, and this is your news and sports update for 1 o'clock. A second special council meeting to address violent crime will be held today at 6 p.m. On Wednesday, the Vancouver City Council voted against a proposal that would install more CCTV cameras in public spaces to address the concerns around violent crime. Councillor Melissa DeGenova, who introduced the motion, was the only one who voted in favor of it. Her proposal came in because public safety was proving to be an issue after October's municipal vote. Vancouver police say the city is seeing about 4 random assaults per day. An East Vancouver man has died after a gunfire exchange happened with the Vancouver Police Department last night. Constable Tanya Byzantine says approximately 6 shots were fired.
When VPD patrol officers arrived on scene, an altercation ensued, and therefore that resulted in an exchange of gunfire.
Commercial Drive was closed down shortly after gunshots were heard. The VPD says they were called out to an assault at an apartment building near Commercial Drive and East 5th Avenue around 8:30. One officer was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Ottawa police say that they will not press charges on the woman who danced on the tomb of the unknown soldier. During the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, a woman was captured on video dancing on the tomb of the unknown soldier. During a news conference, Deputy Chief Trish Ferguson said the woman would not be charged. The woman was from outside the province. When police spoke with her, she said she was said to show remorse, and police said that they were confident she would not reoffend. Ottawa police also said that they believe this was an isolated incident and that it will not happen again. Today, Israel came to an annual halt to commemorate the European Jews who died in the Holocaust. Jordana Miller has the story.
A 2-minute siren wailing across Israel, people in traffic screeching to a halt, a collective moment to honor the memory of 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. This year's state ceremony at Yad Vashem focusing on the transports. That's the vast and meticulously planned Nazi train system that deported Jews all across Europe to their death. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett rejecting the comparison of, quote, wars today to the Holocaust. He called it an unprecedented event in human history. Jordana Miller, ABC News, Jerusalem.
U.S. defense attorneys have accused the FBI of improperly questioning the alleged gunman in New York City's recent subway shooting that left 29 people injured. Aaron Katersky has more.
Without notice, defense attorneys said FBI agents entered the cell of Frank James on Tuesday, questioned him, took multiple swabs of his DNA, and directed him to sign certain documents. His attorney said it violated James's constitutional rights, and they'll seek to suppress whatever statements he made. No comment from federal prosecutors. In a letter to the court, the defense said the government committed this intrusion absent advance notice to counsel and only provided a warrant after the fact. James is accused of shooting 10 people on the subway in what police have called the worst commute disruption here since the 9/11 attacks. Aaron Katersky, ABC News, New York.
And now for sports news. The Vancouver Canucks will play their final home game of the season tonight against the Los Angeles Kings. In celebration of their final game, the team will announce its team award winners and also have festivities around the arena for Fan Appreciation Night. Goaltender Thatcher Demko was scratched ahead of Tuesday's game due to an undisclosed injury. His status is questionable at this point, which means Spencer Martin could get the start again. Martin was impressive in the win over Seattle on Tuesday, stopping 30 of 32 shots. It's a busy day in the NHL today, with 18 teams in action, including 4 Canadian teams. With the playoff picture all but set, the only remaining seeding that hasn't been determined is the Western Conference's wildcard spots. The Dallas Stars and Nashville Predators are both into the playoffs, but their matchups are not yet certain. Dallas will not play today, but Nashville will be taking on the division clinching the Colorado Avalanche. Along with the Canucks, the Senators, Flames, and Oilers will all be in action tonight. The NFL draft begins today, and it begins with style. For the first time ever, the event will be held in Las Vegas on the famous Las Vegas Strip. 5 Canadians are looking to get the call, including Brampton, Ontario's John Mechie, who's projected to go in the second or third round. And for weather this week, tomorrow we'll see some showers with highs of 15. For the weekend, we'll be seeing some rain with a chance of a break on Sunday. Going into next week, we'll see some rain from Monday until Thursday with highs of 14 and lows of 8. I'm Riley Lyons, and you're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.